What if I told you that right now, underneath the city you live in, beneath the roads, the pipes, the concrete, there are foundations that do not match the buildings sitting on top of them? What if I told you that the greatest empire in human history was erased so completely that we do not even have a name for it anymore? Not conquered, not collapsed, not forgotten through time. Deleted and replaced deliberately, systematically, with a history written by the people who destroyed it. Today we are going to look at 10 moments in history that you were taught were disasters, plagues and wars, natural chaos, human tragedy, random suffering. But what if every single one of them was a controlled demolition? What if history is not a story of progress, but a series of carefully scheduled resets? Strap in, because nothing you learned in school prepared you for this. Segment 1, the framework. What is a Tartarian reset? Before we get into the events, you need to understand what we are actually talking about. Most of you have heard the word Tartaria thrown around. Some of you think it is a flat earth adjacent meme. Some of you think it is a joke. Stay with me. Because what serious researchers, architects, historians, independent archaeologists have begun to notice is a pattern. An architectural, linguistic, and geological pattern that points to something extraordinary. There was once a civilization, vast, technologically sophisticated, globally connected, that existed across what we now call Russia, Central Asia, North America, Eastern Europe, and parts of Africa and South America. The historical record calls it Tartaria, and then, somewhere around the 1700s and 1800s, that record just stops. The maps vanish, the references disappear, the buildings get repurposed, the languages get reclassified, and a new sanitized history is installed in its place, with new rulers, new nations, new calendars, and a new story about where we all came from. Here is the critical framework. A Tartarian reset is not a war that destroys and leaves ruins. It is a transition event, carefully engineered to wipe out one civilization and immediately install a replacement. The old population is reduced, the survivors are given a new identity, and the winners write the history books. So now, let us go through the events. 10 moments you recognize, 10 explanations you were given, and 10 alternative readings that will make you question everything. Segment 2, Event 1, the mud flood. Start here because this is the physical evidence, the stuff you can actually see with your own eyes. In hundreds of cities across the world, St. Petersburg, Chicago, Melbourne, Edinburgh, there are buildings where the ground floor is buried, not by later construction, not by gradual accumulation, buried deliberately as if overnight. First floor windows now sit at street level. Doorways open into dirt walls. The architectural proportions only make sense if the ground was once significantly lower. The official explanation: gradual city planning, deliberate raising of streets over time for drainage, mundane infrastructure decisions. But here is what that explanation cannot account for: the sheer geographic scale of this. Every continent, dozens of major cities, all showing the same pattern, all happening in roughly the same historical window, the early to mid-1800s. The Tartarian reading is this. This was the aftermath. Whatever mechanism was used to reduce the old civilization, whether a directed energy event, a deliberate flooding operation, or a geophysical weapon, it left a layer of sediment across inhabited areas. The new rulers did not announce it. They just built on top, lowered the official street level, and told everyone the old buildings had always had basements. The mud flood is not a natural disaster. It is the crime scene. Segment 3, Event 2, the Black Death, 1347 to 1353. We are told that the Black Death, the bubonic plague, killed somewhere between 75 and 200 million people across Eurasia between 1347 and 1353, a third of Europe's population, gone in 6 years. The official story: rats, fleas, and a bacterium called Yersinia pestis, traveling along trade routes from Central Asia. Now ask yourself a historian's question, not a medical one: who survived and who rebuilt? Because here is what the historical record shows. The areas hit hardest were densely populated, architecturally sophisticated, and economically independent urban centers. The very cities that would have been the core infrastructure of an advanced civilization. And the areas that emerged strongest after the plague were the early nation-states of Western Europe. England, France, nascent German principalities, the exact political entities that would go on to colonize the world. The Tartarian reading: the Black Death was not a random biological event. It was a targeted depopulation program, using either a deliberately introduced pathogen or a series of coordinated poisonings, applied specifically to urban centers with Tartarian heritage. The chaos of the die-off created the perfect cover for asset seizure, architectural repurposing, and population replacement. The rats and fleas narrative, a medieval cover story, one that conveniently blamed the victims' own cities, their markets, their density, their cosmopolitanism, for the catastrophe inflicted upon them. Segment 4, Event 3, The Great Lisbon Earthquake, 1755. November 1st, 1755, All Saints' Day, every church in Lisbon is full. Then, one of the most powerful earthquakes ever recorded in European history strikes, followed by a massive tsunami, followed by fires that burn for 5 days. An estimated 60,000 people die in a single morning. Lisbon, at the time one of the wealthiest and most powerful colonial capitals in the world, is reduced to rubble. The official explanation, tectonic activity, the Azores-Gibraltar fault line, pure geology. Here is what is curious. Lisbon was, at the time, a city famous for its pre-colonial architectural sophistication, buildings and structures that did not match the supposed technological level of 18th century Portugal, buildings that architectural researchers today identify as potentially pre-reset in origin. The city was rebuilt almost immediately, with remarkable speed, under the direct control of the Marquis of Pombal, who used the disaster to impose Enlightenment-era rationalist urban planning over the old organic city layout. The new Pombaline Lisbon was a grid, a controlled, surveillable, administrable grid. The Tartarian reading, the earthquake, real or artificially triggered, was the demolition permit. What was rebuilt was not Lisbon. It was a colonial administrative capital, carefully restructured to serve a new imperial order. The destruction of the old architecture was not a tragedy. It was the objective. Segment 5, Event 4. The Napoleonic Wars, 1803–1815. Napoleon Bonaparte, the Little Corporal, self-crowned emperor, military genius, liberator, tyrant. We have been given so many versions of Napoleon that we rarely stop to ask the fundamental structural question: what did the Napoleonic Wars actually destroy, and who controlled the reconstruction? Look at the geography of the campaigns with fresh eyes. Napoleon did not just fight battles. He systematically swept through every major center of old European civilization: Egypt, Italy, Spain, Prussia, Austria, Poland, Russia, each campaign reaching deeper into territories that would have been under Tartarian administrative influence. He dismantled the Holy Roman Empire, a 1,000-year political structure, in 1806, casually, as if it were nothing. After Waterloo, who rebuilt Europe, the Congress of Vienna, 1815, a gathering of the new European powers that redrew every border, reinstalled every monarchy, and set up the political architecture that would define the modern world. The Tartarian reading: Napoleon was not a revolutionary, he was a bulldozer, deployed to clear the remaining administrative and institutional structures of the old civilization so that the new order, centered on the banking houses of London and the emerging nation-state system, could be installed cleanly. The wars were not about ideology, they were about jurisdictional clearance. The Rothschilds did not finance both sides of Waterloo because they were greedy. They financed both sides because they owned the outcome either way. Segment 6, Event 5, The Year Without a Summer, 1816. 1816, the year after Napoleon is defeated and Europe is being rebuilt. The year the Congress of Vienna is finalizing the New World Order. And in that same year, the entire Northern Hemisphere experiences catastrophic crop failures. Snow falls in June across North America and Europe. Famine kills hundreds of thousands. Social chaos erupts. The official cause: the eruption of Mount Tambora in Indonesia in 1815, the largest volcanic eruption in recorded history, which ejected enough particulate into the atmosphere to block sunlight globally. Convenient timing. The Tartarian reading: whether the climate disruption was caused by Tambora, by the residual atmospheric effects of whatever reset technology had been deployed, or by deliberate manipulation of supply chains during the chaos of the Napoleonic aftermath, the result was identical. Any population that had survived the wars, maintained agricultural independence, or retained community cohesion was suddenly dependent on centralized food distribution. Dependency is control. The year without a summer did not just cause famine, it installed the psychological infrastructure of dependence on the new state system. Segment 7, Event 6. The Great Fires of London, Rome, and Chicago, 1666 and 1871. Here is a pattern that should make you stop and pay attention. Three of the most historically significant cities in the Western world experienced catastrophic fires that destroyed their old architectural cores, and were rebuilt rapidly and completely in a new standardized style. London, 1666. The Great Fire burns for 4 days, destroying 13,200 houses and 87 churches in the old medieval city, rebuilt by Christopher Wren in a new, rational, classical style. Rome, repeatedly sacked, burned, and reconstructed, with each reconstruction progressively erasing older urban layers and replacing them with the classical Roman aesthetic we now accept as ancient. Chicago, 1871. The Great Fire destroys the city center, rebuilt within 2 years, now the birthplace of modern steel-frame skyscraper architecture, the city that gives us the template for every 20th century urban center on Earth. The Tartarian reading. These were not accidents, they were scheduled demolitions. The old buildings, many of them free energy receivers, architectural technologies, or civic infrastructure of the previous civilization, were targeted. The fires moved with suspicious precision, sparing what the new order needed and destroying what it did not. And in every case, the rebuilding happened at impossible speed, because the funding was already in place. The plans were already drawn, they were waiting for the excuse. Segment 8, Event 7. The Spanish Flu, 1918–1920. 50 to 100 million people dead, worldwide, in 2 years. The timing, the immediate aftermath of World War I, itself a war that redrew every map in Europe, destroyed the Ottoman Empire, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and the Russian Tsar simultaneously. 3 empires gone in 4 years, replaced by what? The League of Nations, the first attempt at a globalist governing body, the Federal Reserve already established in 1913, and the Balfour Declaration reshaping the Middle East. Then the flu arrives and kills the survivors. The Tartarian reading. World War I was jurisdictional clearing on an industrial scale, finishing what Napoleon started. The Spanish flu was the cleanup operation, targeting the young adult population most capable of resistance, most likely to remember what the old world looked like, most likely to ask dangerous questions. The flu did not just kill people, it killed the generation that bridged the old world and the new. Segment 9, Event 8. The destruction of the old world's fairs, 1893–1916. This one does not get talked about enough, and it should be the loudest alarm bell of all. Between 1851 and 1916, a series of World's Fairs were held across the United States and Europe, in Chicago, St. Louis, Philadelphia, San Francisco, Buffalo, and others. These events showcased what were presented as newly constructed exhibition buildings. But look at the photographs, really look. These are not temporary buildings. They are monumental, ornate, architecturally sophisticated structures, covered in complex carvings, featuring free-span domes, featuring construction techniques that would challenge modern engineers, built, we are told, in 12 to 18 months by unskilled immigrant labor. And then, every single one demolished immediately after the fair ended. Why build structures of that magnitude to demolish them? The Tartarian reading. They did not build them, they found them. The World's Fairs were the new civilization's way of presenting the old civilization's infrastructure to a public that needed to believe it was new, while simultaneously disposing of the evidence after the showcase was complete. The Chicago World's Fair did not introduce America to great architecture. It introduced America to architecture that was already there, and then made sure no one would ever look for it again. Segment 10, Event 9. The Soviet PURGES and the Cultural Revolution, 1930s to 1960s. 2 separate events, one unified purpose. Stalin's Soviet Union, 1930s. Systematic destruction of churches, monasteries, and pre-revolutionary architecture across Russia and Central Asia, the heartland of old Tartaria, entire cities renamed, histories rewritten, the old imperial elite liquidated, their libraries burned, their archives seized. Mao's Cultural Revolution, China, 1966 to 1976. Systematic destruction of the 4 olds. Old customs, old culture, old habits, old ideas. Temples demolished, artifacts destroyed. Educated adults sent to labor camps. A deliberate amnesia imposed on 1 billion people. The Tartarian reading. Russia and China were the 2 territories most densely saturated with Tartarian heritage. Both underwent revolutions that installed new governing systems. Both new systems then launched explicit programs to destroy physical and cultural memory of the pre-revolutionary world. This was not ideological excess. This was targeted archival destruction, because the evidence of the Old World was most concentrated in those territories, and the New World Order needed that evidence gone. Segment 11, Event 10, The Discovery of the New World, 1492 to the 1600s. We have been taught that Christopher Columbus discovered an empty-ish continent, populated by Stone Age tribal societies. We have been taught that the Spanish conquistadors defeated primitive civilizations using superior technology. But the archaeological record disagrees, profoundly. Pre-Columbian North America shows evidence of vast urban centers, complex road networks, and sophisticated agricultural infrastructure. The Amazon basin, now mostly jungle, shows clear evidence of having once been densely farmed, terraced, and inhabited by civilizations of staggering sophistication. The native populations of the Americas were not remnants of a Stone Age. They were survivors of a previous technological peak. And the Spanish did not just conquer them, they extracted them. The gold, silver, and resources stripped from the Americas did not just make Spain wealthy, they capitalized the reset. They funded the construction of the new civilization that was being built on top of the old one. The Tartarian reading, the discovery of the Americas was not exploration, it was asset recovery. The conquistadors were not adventurers, they were repossession agents, collecting the accumulated wealth of a branch of the old civilization that had survived in isolation, and financing the global reset with what they found. Segment 12, The Connecting Thread. 10 events, 10 different centuries, 10 different continents and regions. And yet, the same fingerprints every time. 1. Depopulation of a specific demographic. The educated, the connected, the elder generation that remembers. 2. Physical destruction of old architecture, libraries and infrastructure. 3. Rapid reconstruction in a new standardized style, under centralized direction. 4. Immediate installation of new administrative systems. New calendars, new languages, new maps, new historical narratives. 5. An officially sanctioned explanation. Plague, earthquake, fire, war, that frames the event as natural or inevitable rather than engineered. The resets are not random, they are scheduled, they happen at civilizational transition points. They happen when a population has accumulated enough wealth, knowledge, or independence to become ungovernable. And they always end with the same thing. A simplified, surveilled, dependent population being handed a new history and told it has always been this way. Closing. I want to leave you with one question, not a rhetorical one, an actual question I want you to sit with. If this happened before, if a civilization as advanced as the evidence suggests once existed and was deliberately erased, what makes you confident it could not happen again? We live in a world where buildings are demolished before their time, where historical archives are digitized and then the originals are stored, where entire languages die within a generation when schools stop teaching them, where the internet can be edited, censored, and rewritten in real time. The mechanisms of the reset are not in the past. They are alive, they are active. The difference between then and now is this. Right now, in this moment, you are aware that the reset is a technology, that civilizations are not just built, they are managed down when they grow too independent, rebuilt when they become useful again. That awareness is the most dangerous thing they could never take from the last civilization, because they did not know to look for it. But you know now. Leave a comment, which of these 10 events hits the hardest for you, which one changed how you see history. And if this video made you see something you cannot unsee, share it, not because it is a video, but because someone in your life needs to ask these questions. Subscribe and hit the button. I will see you in the next one.